Goes for that, mid off. There it is. The debutant does it with a boundary in a long journey for Australia. It's been 10 years. They win this series. They regain their Border Gavaskar draw.
I like the way he's finished it. It means a lot to the man. It means a lot to this Australian team.
Australia ending a decade-long wait to reclaim the Border Gavaskar trophy, defeating India by 6 wickets in the fifth and final test at the Sydney Cricket Ground on Saturday night Caribbean time. India were dealt a blow ahead of day 3 following confirmation that lead seamer Jasprit Bumrah would not be fit enough to bowl. Yet, with the widened cracks on the New South Wales pitch, there was a possibility India wouldn't need Bumrah. The conundrum was the visitors still needed to bat on the deteriorating surface. With all that context, 4 wickets in hand and a lead of 145 runs, Ravindra Jadeja and Washington Sundar walked to the crease with the intention of seeing off the early bursts from the Aussies. But at that, they failed miserably. India only managed to add 16 runs to their overnight total of 141 before being dismissed for 157 in 39.5 overs as Pat Cummins 3 for 44 and a player of the match Scott Boland 6 for 45 wrapped up the innings, leaving the hosts chasing 162 runs for the series win. Now defending that slitting the total, the new look Indian opening pair of Mohammad Siraj and Prasidh Krishna had the worst possible start, gifting the Australians 12 extras in their first 11 balls as the Aussies raced to 35 without loss after 3 overs. Once again, an aggressive shot brought about the end of young Sam Constas for 22. His wicket was the first of 3 for Krishna, who also removed Marnus Labuschagne for 4 and Steve Smith for 6 to leave Australia 58 for 3 and giving India an inkling of hope. But a 46-run fourth wicket stand between opener Usman Khawaja, who top scored with 41, and Travis Head 34 not out, either side of the lunch interval, followed by an unbeaten 58-run partnership between Head and the debutant Bo Webster 39, saw the hosts home safely to a 6-wicket win inside 3 days, and of course the 3-1 series win. All right, let's hear from the captains then, starting with India's stand-in skipper Jasprit Bumrah, who says the team gave a good account of themselves despite the 3-1 result.
The whole series was well fought, and today as well, we were in the game, so it was not like it was totally one-sided. Yes, this is how Test cricket goes in the nerve moments. Whichever team holds their nerve for the longest and sticks together and tries to find a way out of that will win the series. So I think it was a well-fought series, a lot of good learnings for us and experience that our players have gained who've come in for the first time.
Meanwhile, Australia's captain Pat Cummins is basking in the comeback series win.
Yeah, immensely proud. We spent a lot of time together, the group, over the years, so we knew we weren't at our best at Perth, but it was never as bad as, it seems. So, you stick tight and double down on what makes us a really good side. And we've managed to have a lot of fun along the way as well. Absolutely love playing alongside these guys. And, it's, some success at the end is always nice.
Yeah, the win also confirming Australia's place in the World Test Championship final. They will play South Africa later on this year. Cricket commentator Wazir Mohammed joins us now via Zoom to look back at the result. Fans, good afternoon and welcome. Hope you're doing well today.
Not doing too badly at all, thanks.
Awesome. Faz, did this series live up to the hype?
Ricardo, this is the first series in a long, long time that I have this sense of longing that it's done. It's sort of like a World Cup football finals. When the final is played, you just can't wait for 4 years to come around. It was really enjoyable. It was competitive. I think the presence of the fans made a huge difference. The atmosphere associated with the quality of the cricket, the little bits of aggro here and there, the comments, the exchanges, and the forthright views of some of the commentators. It really made for a thoroughly entertaining Test match series.
And I guess at the end of it, well, certainly I would say the better team came out on top. Is that how you view it?
Absolutely. And indeed, to be fair about it, as much as I respect what Jasprit Bumrah said, that yes, so sometimes narrow margins can make the difference. If it had been an uninterrupted Test match at the Gabba in Brisbane, it could have been 4-1 instead of 3-1. But then again, it would not have accurately reflected the balance of play. in many of these situations. For example, just on that third day, the chase, where apart from that really terrible first 3 overs, and then those 3 wickets, including leaving Stephen Smith stranded on 9,999 Test match runs, it brought the thing back to life again. And you had the cheering of the fans and the Aussies going on and the Indians going on. But then it was taken away from India with the excellent batting of Khawaja, Head, and the debutant Bo Webster. But really, throughout it all, it felt as if all you were waiting for was some decisive intervention to shift the match in another direction.
Yeah, very much the case. And I feel as if that was the case throughout the course of the series. Well, yes, if you look at it through Indian eyes, you will say, well, we had our opportunities here and there. But what you had consistently was the depth of the Australians, both with the bat and with the ball, coming through at pivotal moments and making the difference throughout the course of the campaign. And whereas, for example, there was an over-reliance on Jasprit Bumrah for India in the bowling department, not the case for Australia. And I guess, unfortunately for India, on that final day, when the one man that you would want to be out there, Jasprit Bumrah, he wasn't able to take the field and bowl, Faz.
Yeah, and that will always leave what if. What if Bumrah was available and fully fit on that last day? You never know. He could have bowled his team to a spectacular victory to square the series and keep the trophy. It might not have made a difference in the end. Australia might have scrambled home in a pulsating finish. But I think that's always the intrigue of any contest where you have someone missing at a key point. And I think at the end of it all, I had no issue with Bumrah being made man of the series, notwithstanding the contribution of Pat Cummins for Australia with ball and bat and as leader, because I think the entire series was really defined by whenever Bumrah was in action. There was always something going to happen.
Yeah, and Faz, now that you talk about Bumrah, can you comment for me on any level of improvement that we've seen from him in recent years? Because he has been a top bowler for many years now, but I see where Usman Khawaja, the Aussie opener who struggled throughout this series, never in his career had been dismissed by Bumrah before this series. And in this series, he was dismissed 6 of the 8 innings by Bumrah and suggested that Bumrah is more mature and is a better bowler now than he was when he faced him previously. Do you agree with Khawaja?
Sure, and which is what you would expect, Lance. When you think of the greats in the bowling department, you think of a Malcolm Marshall, where when he lost pace and he cut down his pace and could move the ball both ways, through the air, off the seam. It's probably the same thing with Bumrah, but in a different way. He's a different type of bowler, but clearly he's a thinking cricketer. And we often have this Stone Age idea that fast bowlers don't really think the game as much, and that's clearly untrue, because you could see in Bumrah working out opponents, the strategies, whether it's to the short ball, whether it's full length, whether it's outside off, whether it's on the body. And obviously, as you mentioned, Khawaja, he would have worked out that he needed to change the tactics, bowling to someone like an Usman Khawaja, in the same way that Australia had Virat Kohli's number, by just bowling consistently outside the off stump.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned Malcolm Marshall, it is one of the reasons, Faz, why Marshall was identified as a potentially outstanding coach from his playing days, because he was such a thinking bowler. And everyone who played with him, and I should say against him, would have commended Malcolm Marshall on how well he assessed batsmen and how much he assessed what he had to do to get the wickets he got.
Well, I had the immense privilege of being alongside Malcolm Marshall on a couple of tours, just as a journalist, of course. Yes. And just listening to him talk about the game. And then you said, how did you come up with that? I mean, there's no way in the world that a neophyte like myself would even think of that. But he was a student of the game, as I think most outstanding cricketers and most outstanding sportswomen and women are. They don't just wake up one morning and be brilliant. Which is a complete fallacy. There's talent, yes, but there's a tremendous amount of work. They are essentially students of the game in every respect.
Yeah, and about Khawaja, I saw where Michael Clarke, the former Australia captain, has called for Khawaja to retire because of his declining production with the bat. Didn't score many runs in this series. I think he only had 150 and hasn't scored 100 in his last 31 test innings. But your thoughts on the views of Michael Clarke that it should be the end of the road now for Khawaja?
Well, if it is the end of the road, who are they going to pick? Nathan McSweeney? Because remember, at the start of this series, Australia were fishing around for openers. I get the impression, notwithstanding what Michael Clarke has to say, that they are looking towards, if not necessarily wholesale changes, but significant changes to the squad following the Ashes series in 12 months' time. Because, you know, they live and die for the Ashes. And therefore, because he had such a fantastic Ashes series in England in 2023, I would be inclined to believe that they'll want to give him another series, notwithstanding his struggles in this one, because almost everybody struggled once Bumrah was on song. Occasionally they got away and got a great innings, but I don't think they'll discard him, even though it's obvious, with only one player in their team on the younger side of 30, it's clearly a team that is aging and needs to get into that transition as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched that, Faz, because I was just about to ask you your assessment on the outlook of this Australian setup. As you pointed out, only Sam Constas is under 30 in the side that played this fifth test, and they brought in Bo Webster, who played pretty well in the test match, but he's 31 years old, and he replaced a 33-year-old in Mitch Marsh. So how much longer do you suspect this Australian team will be able to perform at the level that they are currently performing?
Probably not as long as you would think that if they were in their mid-20s and so on. But I think what we have now, and you gentlemen know sports science much better than I do, you could almost say that 30 is the new 25 as far as levels of fitness, levels of conditioning, levels of preparedness. And you saw Bo Webster, you just fall into the game as if he was born to play test match cricket. And he's been playing first class cricket for a long time, over 5,000 runs. I remember when Mike Hussey played his first test match, I think he had almost 8,000 first class runs playing for Australia for the first time against the West Indies in 2005. So it's not unprecedented, but it's clearly a sign that, look, you don't want to wait until everyone is declining at the same time, and then you're going to be in a crisis. But I think it's something that they've got to look at, but I don't think it's panic stations as yet because of the improved levels of fitness now.
Yeah, and where does India go from there now that we've looked at the Aussies? Because I've been saying for a couple of years now that India, from a standpoint of producing world-class cricketers, are probably the best team in the world at the moment. If you look at all the formats together, they're reigning T20 world champions. They are 50 over runners-up the last World Cup we had. And they were runners-up in the last two World Test Championship finals. So obviously they're a top team. Are there tweaks that they have to make? We'll already discuss Rohit Sharma's status at the moment, whether go or stay. But how do you see India moving on from this?
Well, let me paraphrase Border Gavaskar, who's been commentating quite frequently about this. He says there's no room for superstars in the sense that you're not bigger than the game. And therefore, when it's your time to go, you have to go. And whether he's alluding to Kohli, whether he's alluding to Rohit Sharma, or anyone else who feels that they have a certified, guaranteed place in an Indian test team.
Especially in the context, the fact that we're talking about an Indian setup at the moment that has so many young, talented players waiting to break in.
Precisely the point. And if I could just draw an Australian analogy, where the Aussies told Ian Healy, this is the end of your career. We have Adam Gilchrist, arguably the greatest wicketkeeper batsman to ever not play Test cricket, waiting in the wings for 3 years. And as you said quite correctly, Lance, just think of the sheer numbers of India as a cricketing nation. And surely there would be quite a bit of talent just champing at the bit, just waiting for that opportunity. And a 3-1 series loss in Australia might just be that opportunity.
Yeah, well, Faz, we're going to leave it there, but we are going to stay with you because we have another really topical issue to discuss regarding international cricket after the break. So stand by. We're coming back to you shortly. And we'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.